Okay, I'm sat here today with Dr. Martin Wood, who's doing some teaching for us on RPE here at Gloucestershire, particularly in relation to the Hinduism course. You've been teaching some of our students in the second year, which means, of course, you've studied Hinduism yourself quite a lot on various levels and at various times. What is for you the academic study of Hinduism? What's that entail? What's it been like?
Mostly, I've been focusing on the diaspora, Gujarati Hindu communities of Leicester, Bristol, and also London, and its diversity of expression of Hinduism. And I also was lucky enough to go out to New Zealand during my doctoral research in order to do exactly the same for a comparative ethnography out there. So what I've been looking at as the core of my research has been, up to this point, looking at the use of devotional food in questions of Hindu authority, Hindu identity, and also in what you might term loosely as vernacular traditions that aren't necessarily covered by the orthodox definition of Hinduism or the orthodox practices of Hinduism.
So things that are sat at the edge of that?
Yeah, definitely informed by mainstream representative versions of Hinduism, but apart from and interpreting its own understanding of certain issues which take place. So, for example, looks a lot at the phenomenon of the evil eye in food. And
which in a lot of textbooks about Hinduism you would never see.
Yeah, precisely.
But actually in people's daily life and discussion.
Seemingly quite important. And this also plays into the whole idea of authority and identity. So certain Hindu traditions will predicate their identity on absolutely dismissing any belief in the evil eye.
And so would kind of style themselves as kind of rational and rejecting superstition.
Absolutely, much more rationalised, much more cleaned up.
And by implication, those that they are opposed to, in some sense at least, or see themselves as not being members of, they are suggesting are kind of riddled with some kind of superstition.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, not that it is even remotely a pejorative term, but certainly a folk understanding of the day-to-day needs and fears and desires and ways of warding off inauspiciousness, which is obviously a very important process to go through, but also attracting auspiciousness as well.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. And then when you look at these new interpretations of this, so for example, when it comes to food and the production of food and the consumption of food, the idea is that the evil eye will be cast upon the food of the person who they wish to put inauspiciousness on. So when that person eats that food, they will thus become affected in an inauspicious way.
Food is a hugely sensitive topic within many forms of Hindu practice.
Massive, and really, really interesting. So it's this vehicle for intention that food is used. So just to get back to that interesting idea of this in contemporary Hindu society, for example, there was one gentleman I spoke to in Auckland who just bought a restaurant, and he was installing various traditional cooking utensils and ovens, and one of them happened to be a tandoor oven from a previous restaurant which had unfortunately gone bankrupt.
That's not very auspicious.
Not very auspicious at all. So in order to allay any more inauspiciousness, he actually got a Brahmin priest to come in and to do a certain, I imagine some kind of puja or ritual over that particular oven, so that it would ward off any more inauspiciousness, and thus his business would be a great success. So it's like ideas of looking at that, but also much more in the public domain, looking at ideas of food festivals. So, for example, the Swaminarayan tradition are well known in this country for their huge devotional food offerings during certain periods of the festival year. Some of which have actually been included in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's part of their, their presentation of their tradition, and it is a vast phenomenon taking place in Neasden, for example, at the Neasden Mandir, where anything up to 30,000 devotees can attend in any one single day and embark on a 3.5, 4 hour long ritual route around the Mandir and the offerings and the various.
Well, as our students will know, because many of them have been there, the Swaminarayan Mandir in Neasden is huge, and it has capacity to open up those rooms downstairs to an unbelievably capacious size and things.
Absolutely.
That must be amazing when it's filled with people.
Beautifully choreographed as well. Lots of lighting, lots of the Murtis or the deities appear to be floating on oyster shells, and just this massive mountain of food going up to their feet, and beautiful, lavish vegetarian offerings, very, very colourful. And of course, that again plays into a sense of authority and identity in the diaspora. We have the biggest food festival. This food is being devoted to our
Actually,
particular...
in the recent decade or so, the Solomon Orion have made a big, I'm trying to think of the correct kind of term, but have made quite a big sense of which they are representative of a lot of the Gujarati diaspora.
Yeah, very, very much so.
They feel that they stand for a lot of those people and their values. And huge mountains of vegetarian food and a sense of kind of security and lushness together.
Absolutely.
Seems to capture quite a lot, I guess.
Oh, it's phenomenal. And they have done an exceptionally good job of presenting a particular face of Hinduism to the Western world as well as being possibly the authentic face of Hinduism.
Yeah, so that from my original question about what studying Hinduism has entailed, some people might have a presupposition of studying Hinduism would mean a lot of time reading the Upanishads, a lot of time learning Sanskrit, and that would be but actually, although that's very exciting, though that is, an awful lot of it is actually talking to people, presumably, and looking at the way people do things that are quite revealing about what kind of mundane things tell us.
Yeah, absolutely.
What food tells us.
Just simple questions. Why do you do that? Can often elicit the most extraordinary answers, and have done in my experience. So that anthropological, ethnographic immersion into the tradition is something which I find enormously exciting and very, very rewarding and massively enriching for the teaching of the subject as well. Yeah,
there's an awful lot about why people do things locally as well as in kind of far off historical
absolutely.
And geographic periods. Well, that's really interesting. I think really helps us give an insight into the kind of way that Hinduism can be studied. Thank you.
No problem.